The Holy Trinity of cars is the holy grail of automotive design, the pinnacle of automotive achievement, and the pinnacle of automotive technology. Something that is so undisputed and held in such high respect by car lovers that it is never disputed and always commonly appreciated. And the only thing that's any discrepancy is the order of the cars and their beauty and performance. But as of 2023 and 2024, things have been turned upside down with the birth of the new Holy Trinity of cars, the Porsche Mission X, the McLaren W1, and the Ferrari F80 Unibrow. So today we're going to be talking about why this might not be the grand earthquake that it's made out to be, and it might actually be the perfect day for a swell. Welcome back to Covenant Garage, where I talk about cool cars, classic cars, especially performance cars, and disputed car topics. Kicking things off was the Porsche Mission X, a fully electric Le Mans inspired car that combined e-power with ultimate luxury. This car was kind of hated when it was first released, but it wasn't super talked about, not nearly as much as the later W1 and Ferrari F80. What is to note about it is its step away from the curvy and signature Porsche body lines that everyone knows and loves, as well as a step away from its flat six rear-mounted engines. This car had nothing but electrification. However, it's one of the few electric cars that I do not hate, because this car, while electric, was trying something extremely risky and something very different. And I'll get more into that in just a bit. But next up, let's mention the McLaren W1, the predecessor to the beloved, betrothed, and loved, happy McLaren P1, the car that everyone loved and the car that Tavares made a huge financial mistake in restoring. Next is the Ferrari F80 with a horrible Unibrow and a hybrid Le Mans derived V6 that people could not seem to get over because of its lack of two cylinders. We're going to be talking briefly about all three of these cars and why they are hated, and also why they should not be hated, and how they're actually trying so hard to save this dying hobby of ours. With the Porsche Mission X, its hate is obvious. It has an electric drivetrain, and it's not the iconic, historic Porsche that we all love. But what makes cars from the 80s and 90s, not just from Porsche, but from all kinds of brands, so loved and betrothed to us is the fact that they were trying something new, and that they took a huge risk. And a lot of times when they were introduced in the 80s and 90s, they were not loved by enthusiasts like us until later on, and when we learned to appreciate them for what they were. And I see that happening right now. However, we don't have the luxury of time to appreciate these, as the government is strongly incentivizing more and more every day for the complete electrification of cars, and it's only a matter of decades before that happens. However, we can prolong that to possible centuries if we unite strong enough as a car community. It is inevitable, but it doesn't have to be inevitable in our lifetime or a kid's lifetime. What I'm talking about is the preservation of these cool and unique concepts that cars are making. The Porsche Mission X, you might say, isn't very unique, and it's buying into that trend of electrification, and that might be true. I wish more than anyone else that had a flat six, but this car embodies something completely unique that Porsche has never done with any production car before in the creation of this Le Mans Roadster. And I think it's actually so cool. I wish it was combustion engine, and I think it does deserve a knock for that. But aside from that, they tried so hard to create such a unique car, and that's what we can appreciate over the fact that they failed in the sense of combustion engines. But you can't dog on Porsche too much right now, because they're just created a six-stroke engine. They are also trying to conserve and preserve the combustion engines. Next up is the McLaren W1, the V8 that we all so know and love from McLaren with them twin turbski setups. This W1 is drop dead gorgeous, and I think most people agree with that, and it by far received the least amount of hate from the three. However, it's not as beautiful as the P1. At least that's what people say. However, with classic art pieces and art pieces from the Renaissance, both different time periods, but no one says that one is better than the other because they're two different time periods and two different styles. They cannot be compared directly to each other. It's not fair. And I know that it's only been about a decade since the McLaren P1, but that does not make a huge difference. Okay, it's been a little more than a decade. Don't rack me in the comments for that. But it's a completely different era of time. COVID has happened, and that changed the world forever, whether you want to admit it or not. And this new kind of cars that we're seeing with these thin headlights, big grills, and lots more electrification and hybridization is something that a lot of us hate, and rightfully so. However, McLaren did not buy into this with that. Instead, they created the most practical, most true form of a Formula One car for the roads that they could produce that was also street legal and held true to the name and legacy of the 1 Series. It resembles, in my mind, more of the Formula or the F1 from the 80s and 90s than it does of the P1. I still think it holds true to that legacy, and I don't think it's fair to compare it to either one of those in the sense of sheer beauty, because I don't think any of these 3 cars were going for sheer beauty, but rather for innovation. Speaking of innovation, let's talk about Ferrari for a bit, because a lot of people are hating on the F80 Unibrow, and that might be justified, and that might be okay in a sense, because that Unibrow should never be there. But in all other aspects, I do think that this car does not deserve the hate it gets. I do think, objectively speaking, it is probably the least beautiful of the 3. And a lot of people say it's nowhere near the LaFerrari in beauty, but you cannot compare again. It's 2 different eras of car. You can't compare the eras, you can't compare the unique cars, in my personal opinion. You can disagree, you can do whatever you want. But I think that this car deserves way less hate than it's getting. It has a V6 hybrid, and that's what everyone's hating, because they only hear V6 hybrid. And what they don't get is the fact that it's a Le Mans copy and pasted engine from their race winning cars, and they put it into a road legal car for us, for the enthusiasts. Now, not for you and me, because we're broke. But eventually that technology does trickle down. It always trickles down eventually. And we'll get some lesser form of that eventually a few decades from down the line. And that's why you guys got to be excited about this. Because new technology, it always starts out as expensive, but it depreciates as it becomes more commonly known and more easy to reproduce in cheaper ways. And so we'll get a version of this that we can all afford later on. Give it a couple decades. Look, it's always happened throughout history. Paddle shifters used to be one of the most expensive options when they were first introduced, because they were like a Formula One car. Now your Honda Civic has paddle shifters. Your CR-V has paddle shifters. What is the point? The point is that technology trickles down and becomes more affordable. And so, while we might not get an exact Le Mans engine like this car, we can still appreciate and should appreciate the innovation that Ferrari is taking with this car. They're stepping away, sure, from their historic V8s that have always screamed to the moon in Europe and that we all have loved and have fallen in love with since we were kids. But that's not what they're trying to do. And in a way, I think that's more respectable than sticking with what they've always done. Because I think it's a lose-lose situation for all 3 of these cars. Because if they do what everyone else is doing, it's a lose. If they continue doing the same thing they've always been doing, it's just a way to make more money for them. And if they try something new, they instantly get hate for it. And so that's really no way they can win. And all we're doing by hating on that is giving them more reason to listen to government incentivization, further speeding up and enhancing the acceptance and dive of the complete electrification. Electrification. Excuse me. But we have a chance to rebalance from this, guys. We, as a car community, are failing these manufacturers, in my opinion. In my opinion, it's not these car manufacturers failing us at all. I think all 3 of them are trying to be unique and different and creating something special to add to their lineage and heritage of iconic history. And I don't think that's something that we should be discouraged or disappointed about. I think we should be the complete opposite, guys, because it's such an encouraging thing to see the biggest of the big, the most exclusive brands going out on a whim and trying something new. That's encouraging for our that shows that there's life still in our hobby. There are tons of young people getting into this hobby, people like myself, people younger, and they're getting discouraged by the older generations because their bank accounts only meet that of a college or high school kid or young adult, and they cannot afford to build a $50,000 rat rod. And not everybody wants to build a rat rod. Some people want to buy a Japanese crap box, and that is okay. But regardless, we shouldn't hate on each other, and we shouldn't hate on these car companies that are still producing combustion engines or varieties of combustion engines, because it's encouraging, guys. They have so many more reasons to go electric. Despite what your redneck in his trailer home says, there is so much more of a reason for car brands to go electric because of what the government is doing. I don't know if that's going to change with the new electoral office, but even if it does change, it's only going to be temporary as the government executive power shifts back and forth, whether it's term to term or a couple terms in between. It always shifts back and forth, and all we're doing is delaying the inevitable, and we should delay it as long as possible. But you guys still have to understand that you guys are not helping delay the inevitable by buying into this common hate that we have. We live in such a world of TikTok culture and clout chasing, and so much toxicity and hate is driving people that I know and people I don't know away from the car community. I hear all the time people leaving the car community because it's so toxic. This at this point doesn't even have anything to do with these car brands, because you can remove these car brands from the picture now and see what I'm really getting at. What I'm really getting at is the horrible toxic culture in the car community. You cannot go anywhere without being crapped on. And that's how it is with the whole world. I understand that. But it doesn't have to be that way in our hobby, or we can at least make it less than that. We are seeing less and less new young car enthusiasts, but we're not necessarily losing interest. It's just that so many people, after peaking interest, are discouraged because so many people hate them for wanting to learn and not knowing. I was in that position a year ago, and now I have 2 jobs in the automotive space, and I'm able to share car content with you guys, even though I know it's horribly inaccurate almost every video. With that said, I don't think that car community is dying because of what the manufacturers are doing or what even the government is doing. I think it's dying because of what we're doing and what we're showing through our actions. Our actions are what's incentivizing the government to incentivize the car communities or the car producers, excuse me. And we're hating on each other, and it's discouraging people from getting into the field, which is not only hurting car businesses that exist outside of car manufacturers. I've listened to many podcasts from the Hamilton collection, and he's basically plateaued, even started to see a little bit of a dip because car community is dying in that sense, and he's one of the largest aftermarket providers for our niche, and he's a great reference to show that decline. And it's not just him. We see all sorts of car companies going bankrupt. It happened to Hoonigan. It happened, I don't remember, some other brand. I'm going to cut that part out. But it's just all around us. And even myself, even I have been tempted to leave the car community before. Not recently, but I have been in the past because of how toxic it can be when you're new. It's so unwelcoming, and my whole point of all of this video is to say that car culture is dying, yes, but we can change it by just being more positive. That sounds cliche, and I'm not saying to respect all builds, but maybe let's more positively critique each other and actually teach each other rather than just yelling at each other and calling each other stupid. I think that behavior is more stupid than anything I've ever heard of. And this is normally the part in a video where the creator would tell you to subscribe. However, I know I'm a nobody, so instead of doing that, I'm going to ask you to let me know in the comments how I can improve my content. And I know this is a bit of a different video from what I normally do, so let me know if you liked it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, and what you guys see for the car culture in the future. Let me know video suggestions as well below, because I always read my comments, and 90% of the time if you leave me a comment on a video suggestion, it has come to fruition in the form of a video that I make. So I love you all, thank you for being here, and I hope you all stay blessed, and I hope you all share some positivity in our hobby, and let's keep it alive for as long as we can.